Welcome everyone, Bob Leone here with Acquisition Experts. I'm here with my good friend Spencer. And Spencer, it's great to have you on again.
Bobby, it's great to be here.
So every week, Spence, you've been coming on, you've been giving me some great questions, you've been giving me some great comments. You get my newsletter every week, so you read all these articles about buying and selling businesses, and you help me get my information that I want to get out to the general public by asking me different subject titles. So what do you got for us this week?
Well, my question is, so you're right. I get your weekly newsletters, and by the way, I think they're great. And if anyone's just interested in business, buying or selling or just business, how do they get your newsletters? We didn't mention that.
We didn't mention that. So the easiest way, I have a pretty simple email address. That's bobtbb@gmail.com. B-O-B, T as in Tom, B as in boy, B as in boy, @gmail.com. Just send me an email and I'll get you right on to the next newsletter. Just went out yesterday, so be sometime early next week that the next one will go out.
Okay, good. So, Bob, this is one that you sent out going on about a year ago. And in a way, I kind of consider it a little dated based on what's going on. And I'm going to just cover it with you. So, it's from a buyer's perspective, and like from a buyer's perspective, what should I be thinking about and expecting? And let me just show you this first paragraph, because I think it's not as complete as it needs to be. There are some additional things that it says there are many reasons to buy a business, including financial independence, job security, control of destiny, investments, tax advantages, freedom, and lack of suitable job opportunities. And yeah, you'd have to say yes to that. Next sentence, as a prospective buyer, you probably have a vision of you being your own boss and calling your own shots. Yeah, I'm going to be my own boss. Here's what I want to ask you about. Although profitability is important, if you risk making a terrible mistake if you don't buy a business that you like. And yeah, I can relate to that. But, I lived in the Northeast. I was in Connecticut. I worked in Manhattan. And I did well. And I had given some thought about having my own business. But I kind of stayed in the corporate environment, and glad I did. I'm happy with all that. But from what you're telling me, you're seeing just an infusion of buyers from the Northeast. New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, and so forth, looking to come down here. So if I'm that kind of buyer, maybe an out-of-market buyer, it seems like in addition to thinking about, I would like to be in this kind of a business, in addition to that, it seems like what area am I going to be in? What area of Florida am I going to be in if I'm interested in Florida? So the area is important. And also, like the size of the business. How big is this thing that I might be trying to take over? So it seems like at least those three are really important things that a potential buyer should be thinking about.
Absolutely. I mean, profitability, that's number one. What's my, I say it every week. Financials. We want to know what the business is making. But the old saying says that if you like what you do, you never work a day in your life. And so a lot of our advertising and marketing dollars are spent on targeting the Northeast, and it's been pretty easy the past several months with COVID-19 being a push out of those areas. So now we have people coming down, and we use the line, live, work, and play. And because where's better than the Treasure Coast? I mean, the Treasure Coast is just awesome. I remember selling the supermarket up on Seaway Drive up in Fort Pierce to a Miami guy probably about 8 years ago. And his whole criteria was the fishing. Was the fishing that is available to him up in that area. He wanted nice clean waterways. He wanted a nice subdued lifestyle. He wanted to get out of the Miami rat race. What's important to one buyer might not be important to another buyer. That list that you read off there is certainly a good basic place to start. But that's why you use a business broker. You use a business broker. So I'm going to sit down with you, and I see you married. I see you got 3 kids. And now, what's the school district like in St. Lucie County versus Martin County.
Right. So you're talking about the quality of life in a particular area, in this case, the Treasure Coast, and then also the business climate in a particular area here versus Tampa or Orlando or some other place.
Correct. Because we've always been pretty sleepy here on the Treasure Coast, which, to a certain buyer, that's a huge quality. They want to be out of the rat race. And I wouldn't say we're sleepy anymore. St. Lucie County has grown by leaps and bounds over the last several years. And the growth here right now in the residential market is huge. So we have people coming in from all over the country moving into the Treasure Coast. If you haven't been out to Tradition lately, take a ride out there, see what's going on.
I was just looking at some drone aerial footage from Stephen Pickett of the Tradition area, and he was showing me some stuff. It's like a small city or a city that wasn't there a year ago. It's just amazing growth. So Port St. Lucie at one time was the number one growth area in, I think it's like 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And now it is still one of the big growth areas in Florida, maybe in the United States.
Absolutely. I got to see all the Tradition grow up. I remember I was in the point of sale business back then, and I was hitting those first initial restaurants that went into town square out there. And, if there was, 5,000 homes, that was a lot. And, today I couldn't even tell you what the number of homes are out in that area.
Isn't it amazing?
Amazing.
The other thing, so area is important, and you have conversations with people that call you from the Northeast about areas, the area, Treasure Coast versus other places. What about the size of the business? I'm up in the Northeast. I've gotten substantial savings. I'm thinking about investing in business. How do I go about thinking, how big a business do I want to take on?
Great question. Just great information. So when I send anybody a confidentiality agreement, the NDA on a business, with that I send them a resume to fill out and a personal financial statement, because I need to be able to understand your background, your skill sets, your past experiences, and I also need to know your financial position, so that I can try to direct you into the right size business. I don't need you looking at $2 and $3 million companies that are going to require, on the very small end, $200,000 to $300,000 as a 10% SBA deal, when all you have is $200,000. Not that we can't find you a good business with $200,000. We certainly can, but we need to make sure we're sizing you up correctly to the right size business.
So that makes sense to me. And so, I'm looking at this and the first paragraph. So it seems like if I'm someone from out of market, the Northeast, I need to be thinking about the kinds of businesses I like, what area I might want to be, the size of the business. The rest of the article that you sent out seems to make sense. It's talking about my expectation as a buyer in the business, and I just want to turn this over to you and have you make comments on the additional things I can expect.
So I think what you're leading me into here, Spence, is actually what I call the process. And it's a very simple process, and we use it every time a buyer comes to the table. How do buyers come to find me? They go on the typical websites for buying a business, BizBuySell, BizQuest, Business Nation, and they scroll through all of those listings that are on there. If they hit on one of my listings, the website generates me an email, and I respond to that email through our MLS system. We have an MLS system that covers the entire state of Florida. So something that's very important in what I do, as opposed to a lot of my competition, is that I co-broke. And you sit there and you probably look surprised when I say that, because you think all business brokers co-broke. The reality is only 20% of all deals that are transferred across the country are co-broked.
Well, tell me more about that.
So it's a big snafu in the industry, because when you think of residential or commercial, they kind of use one MLS system and they all co-broke. Well, that's why it's really important when a seller is looking for a business broker, one of the first questions they should ask is, do you co-broke? Because most don't. And that's not fair to the seller. The seller expects that when they give their business and they sign that listing agreement, that if anybody comes to you, you're going to try to sell the business. But just recently, I've been working with this great buyer, and I've called several different agents, and they don't co-broke, or they want to co-broke with a 20-80 split or a 25-75 split. So big area of concern. So now I'm going to just go down the process. So the process is, I get an email from you, I send you back from the MLS system, and you get a confidentiality agreement to sign. You sign that confidentiality agreement. With that came a slick that is called the Business Listing Information Sheet, better known in the industry as the BLI. And that's going to give you the basic information about the business, a little bit about the financial, how long the business has been in business, how many employees, what's the hours of operation, give you a little bit about how much square footage, what they're paying for the rent, enough to wet your whistle.
Now, Bob, I got a question on that. Do you put out any information on your website or on your email to kind of wet your whistle on some of the things that are out there now?
So you just giving me a good lead in here, because on my newsletter, that's how I structure my newsletter every week, is I give you 10 new listings up at the top of the newsletter, which gives you, the asking price, the down payment, if there is a down payment, how much it nets, and how much is the business grossing and gross revenues. And then it gives you a little blurb of what the business is all about. So after that, you get that information, you sign the NDA, and you get it back to me. You're now ready to work with me, the business broker. And so this is a critical area. There's that relationship we talked about in other issues.
So I got a question on that. So if I'm an out-of-market person, I guess I might have conversations with different business brokers. I might be talking to a guy over in Tampa, or initially, or is that not something that you see happening very often in the early phase?
So it's really funny that you say that, because this deal that's closing tomorrow, the buyer who lives in Melbourne is closing on a deal in Indian River County, and his broker lives on the West Coast. So a couple of things have gone on. The broker hasn't really made it over for any of the initial meetings to represent his client, which I was okay with. I'm a good guy, and I try to treat him as if he was my own client. And then, the buyer is the one that says who's going to be the closing agent, the closing attorney for the deal. Well, the guy picks a guy in Lakeland, Florida. So now the buyer, the seller, and the seller's agent have to drive 3 hours tomorrow to get to the closing. So you got to get to know your broker, and you got to think about, is this gentleman going to be, old lady, going to be able to represent me correctly, whether I'm a buyer or a seller? Are we going to have that relationship that I need?
I feel so sorry for you having to drive tomorrow to close a big business deal.
Yeah, me too.
The tears just...
It's going to be a day of glory.
But it's important to me as a potential buyer to get the relationship with the right broker.
Yeah, I felt bad for this guy for the past, we've been doing this for 2.5 months now, that, he never gets to see his broker. Whereas we had problems. I drove up, a 45-minute drive. I drove up, sat with them, and said, come on, let's go over it. But moving on down the list here, when you find the business that looks interesting to you, you're going to sign that confidentiality agreement. The next thing that's probably going to happen after that is I'm going to send you a lot more information. Most brokers today create a package. We call it a confidential business review. And in that, you're going to get a lot of heavy duty information. Because when I sit down with my seller, when I'm taking the listing, it's a whole interview process, and I'm getting their tax returns and their profit and loss sheets and their balance sheets, and I'm trying to get as much information about the history, and I'm creating this narrative that you're going to read, and I'm asking them about all this labor and how many employees, how long they've been there, how much labor, how much do they pay per hour, how many hours a week. And I put that and I gather that all together into one document. And once I get your confidentiality agreement and your personal financial statement and your resume, once I see you have a commitment to the process,
Right.
then I'm going to send you this great big, probably 2 to 3 megabyte PDF for you to sit down and really get to know what you're looking at. And if you're working with a broker who isn't doing that type of marketing for you and you're a seller, well, then you got to reconsider who's representing you. And then after that, you're going to move on to deciding whether this business is for you or not. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up an in-person meeting. So what do you think that was like during COVID? It was a little difficult. So I actually listened to a news pod last night, and the guy closed the deal. He never met the buyer, never met the seller.
In person.
Never met them. Everything was done through Zoom because he listed it the listing appointment was the week that we were totally shut down and told to stay at home. So he did a Zoom call with them. It's a long story, but the bottom line is it's been very difficult. Now we take you back in person. Everybody wears a mask. We stay socially distant. But those in-person meetings, to me, they're the most important. That's the way businesses always used to be sold, was because once I take you in and you get to look at the space, now your heart gets involved with the deal. And if I can get your heart involved in the deal as the buyer, because it happened to me when I bought my deli. I walked in, it probably wasn't the best looking place, but it looked like that old deli on 35th Avenue on 212th Street that I used to go to as a kid.
I remember that deli.
You remember that deli? So, and the whole reason I bought it was, number one, it was a great deal. And number two, it reminded me, my heart got involved. As soon as I walked in, I saw that old deli. So we're going to do that in-person meeting with the owner of the place. And then once we get you to make an offer and we get the seller to agree and you guys agree on price and terms, now you're going to enter into the next phase, which is called due diligence. And we could do a whole show on due diligence, but it's the most important part of the process because this is where you're going to have to utilize a CPA. A lot of buyers and sellers think, well, the business broker is going to be the guy. Well, I'm the guy that gets the deal done. I'm the guy that you listed with. I'm the guy that does the marketing. I'm the guy that does a lot of things. But what I don't do is I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to be. I could go to jail if I give wrong legal advice or if I try to write a document. And I don't give a lot of financial information because I'm not a CPA. So this is a team sport. It's not a solo sport. So I always recommend that you have a CPA, an attorney, to spend a couple of $1,000, when we gotten this far, that they can help you look at the material and decide whether this business is rock solid the way we think it is. Because they're the professionals.
Makes sense.
And then the final area that we're going to go into is who's going to do the closing. So in a lot of real estate transactions today, they use title insurance companies, and then they do the closing. In a lot of big business deals, there's this great big pull of who's going to do the closing. My attorney, your attorney, and everything is a fight right to the bitter end. In Main Street business brokerage, which I've said to you a lot is, $5 million to $50 million, and anything under $5 million, we try to use what's called a closing attorney. They're in the business of closing businesses, and they try to help us get deals done. They don't represent the buyer. They don't represent the seller. Not that you shouldn't have your own attorney looking over documents to make sure that they're rock solid, but the closing attorney creates all of these documents, like the deal I'm doing tomorrow, where there's probably 17 different documents that need to be signed. And they're doing it in the best interest of the buyer and seller when they're creating the documents. So we try to recommend, we have, dozens of closing agent attorneys around the state of Florida that belong to the Business Brokers of Florida Association, and we try to get all our deals done through them. So as you can see, buying a business is not an easy process, but there is a process. We believe in the process, and we know the process works. So, like my friend Spence here, if you have questions, you need to ask them. Anything else I can answer for you today, Spence?
I got a tremendous amount of information, and I know the viewers will get a lot out of it as well.
Thanks, Spence. I really can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and helping me make these educational videos. Until next time, Bob Leone, acquisition expert, 772-621-0528. And my good friend Spencer, have a great day.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thanks, guys.